Hey guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I haven't made a meditation video yet in December, so I wanted to jump on here today before I get ready to vlog, and I wanted to read a meditation to get us set on a wonderful track for December of being balanced and inspired and motivated for the month to come. So I wanted to come over here and read a meditation today. I brought both of the Melody Beatty books with me today. I brought The Language of Letting Go and Journey to the Heart. So I'm just going to kind of look in here at today's meditations and the last couple days to see which one speaks to me. Okay, let's see where we're at. December 2nd and The Language of Letting Go. Let's see which this one. Let's see what yesterday's is about, first of all. Letting people be there for us is December 1st. Putting our life on hold is December 2nd. It's a long one. Well, we should just read today's. Since we haven't read today's, let's read today's. Putting our life on hold, December 2nd. I have absolutely no idea what this meditation is going to be about, so we're going to be surprised together. We cannot afford to put our needs on hold, waiting for another person to fulfill us, make our life better, or come around and be who and what we want that person to be. That will create resentment, hostility, an unhealthy dependency, and a mess to deal with later on. If we have decided we want a particular relationship or want to wait about making a decision in a particular relationship, then we must go on with our own life in the interim. That can be hard. It can feel natural to put our life on hold. That is when we get caught up in the codependent beliefs. That person can make me happy. I need that particular person to do a particular thing in order to be happy. That's a circumstance that can hook our low self-esteem, our self-doubt, and our tendency to neglect ourselves. We can get into this situation a number of ways. We can do this waiting for a letter, waiting for a job, waiting for a person, waiting for an event. We do not have to put our life on hold. There will be repercussions from doing this. Go on with your life. Take life a day at a time. What is something I could be doing now to take care of myself, make myself feel better, get my needs met in an appropriate, healthy way? How can I own my power to take care of myself despite what the other person is or isn't doing? What will happen if I break the system and begin taking care of myself? Sometimes we get the answer we want immediately. Sometimes we wait for a while. Sometimes things don't work out exactly the way we hoped. But they always work out for good and often better than we expected. And in the meantime, we have manifested love for ourselves by living our own life and taking the control away from others. That always comes back to us tenfold, because when we actually manifest love for ourselves, we give our higher power, other people, and the universe permission to send us the love we want and need. Stopping living our life to make a thing happen doesn't work. All it does is make us miserable because we have stopped living our life. Today, I will force myself, if necessary, to live my own life. I will act in my own best interest in a way that reflects self-love. If I have given power or control of my life to someone other than myself, and someone besides a power greater than myself, I will take it back. I will begin acting in my own best interest, even if it feels awkward to do that. I think this is such a great meditation. I remember years and years and years ago, I saw an interview between Oprah Winfrey and Maya Angelou, and Oprah was talking about lessons that she had learned from Maya Angelou, and she was talking about that at one point in her life, Oprah was like, there was somebody that she was dating, and she wouldn't leave the house. Like, friends would ask her to go do stuff, and or she would get a job opportunity or something, and she wouldn't leave the house because she was waiting for this guy to call. Like, every night she would wait for this guy to call. Like, she didn't want to take the trash out. There's I think it's on YouTube somewhere, this clip, but she didn't even want to take the trash out because she was like, I don't want to miss his call. Like, I miss his call, right? And her entire world centered around this guy, which is literally the definition of codependency, when you define your life off of somebody else's life. And I can remember watching that clip, and this was, I think this was before I got sober. Oh, I don't know, maybe. But it reminded me of relationships I had before I got sober, and very unhealthy relationships, where, if they said jump, I said how high. And I had been in abusive relationships, but they weren't necessarily innately abusive, but in retrospect, they felt that way. Because they talked down to me, and everything I did for them. And I'm talking about relationships where I would date somebody for a month or 6 months, or whatever. And And I allowed myself to do that for years and years and years, where I, in different relationships and friendships and things like that as well, toxic friendships that I'm no longer part of, where I defined my existence off of needing to be needed by somebody else, or needing to be desired by somebody else, or needing to be wanted by somebody else, or somebody wanting me to be there or be with them or whatever, right? I've shared this story a lot, but I'm gonna work it all the way through for you guys in a way that I haven't today. So when Alex and I ended up in marriage counseling years ago, and I really didn't think that our marriage was going to make it. I don't think that he did either. And we're in marriage counseling, and so we would go to marriage counseling sessions every week, and then the in between weeks, like I would go one week, he would go another week for individual sessions. And so one of my very first individual sessions, I can remember meeting with our therapist at the time. And he said to me, like I said, I've shared this story a lot. But hold on, because I'm going to share something I haven't shared about this that I don't usually share. Is that he said, do you think that you'd be okay if you and Alex don't make it? And I was like, no, I'd be devastated. I could not imagine what my life would be like without Alex being in my life. I didn't process all the way through like what it would be. I mean, I could imagine him like packing his stuff up and leaving and me being very, very sad and what that would be like. But I really couldn't imagine a life where he wasn't in it anymore. I just couldn't imagine that. I had gone through 2 previous breakups with long-term relationships that were so devastatingly hard, and in both of those situations, in those past relationships, we had both mutually decided to part ways and whatever. And it was really, really hard even then, because the second that you break up with somebody, I feel like you no longer know them. I think that that's really hard. And I didn't want to not know Alex anymore. I didn't want him to not be in my life, and so I didn't think that I could I just didn't think I was going to be okay. I was in a state of, I don't know who I am if he's not in my life. I don't know who I am if I'm not, his husband. I don't know who I am in that situation. And so, and I think that's why a lot of times when people talk about, they'll say our failed marriage, right? Not ours, but like when people refer to their divorce or whatever, they'll say our failed marriage, because they try to make sense of all this energy and love they put into a relationship, and it feels like a failure. And in that moment, it felt like a failure. And so when the therapist was asking me, he's like, do you think you'll be okay if you make it to the other side? I was like, or you make it, if you guys break up? I was like, no, not at all. And he was like, but eventually you'll be okay, right? And I was like, no. I could not imagine a life in which Alex did not exist in my life, right? And so it took about 10 or 15 minutes. It took a while. And finally he was like, but you would eventually be okay. I think he was a little worried, kind of like, oh my God, he's really dependent, right? And I was like, yeah, eventually I'd be okay. He's like, eventually you'd move on. I was like, oh yeah, eventually I'd move on. He was like, so you're not dependent on Alex. You don't need him. And it was like this aha moment for me, right? Where I woke up and I was like, wow, I don't need him. And as much as I don't want to not have him in my life, I do know that I will be okay. If we don't make it and we divorce, I can stand on my own 2 feet. I'm not physically and emotionally dependent on another human being. I can make it on my own. I've made it on my own a lot of other times, This is where I say, refer back to times in your life that you've gone through hard periods. I've been alone and single a lot in my life and done pretty good at it. That if I was single again, I could do it. I don't want to be, but I could, right? And so in that moment, I could visualize myself. He made me go through the whole visualization of living in that place by myself, decorating it myself, having my own group of friends, doing things on my own that had nothing to do with Alex, traveling by myself. He had me process the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, I would be okay. I think I would be okay. And he was like, so you don't need Alex. You don't depend on him. And I was like, no, I guess not. And he goes, so you choose to have him in your life. And I said, yeah. And he goes, and he chooses to have you in your life. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, isn't that a lot more powerful than you needing somebody? You literally need them. You depend on them. Isn't it stronger? Isn't it more powerful to choose to have somebody in your life? Well, that was the starting point, okay? And that year of us, that first year, I talk a lot about marriage counseling, but that first year of marriage counseling, there was a lot of disagreements. There was a lot of yelling in sessions. There was a lot of arguments. It wasn't just going into it that I thought that we weren't going to make it. It was months in that I questioned whether or not our marriage was going to make it, and Alex did too. There were sessions I walked out of, there were sessions that he walked out of, but we had made this commitment that we were going to put everything into it in a year that we had. But between that time, I continued to go to my individual sessions, and Alex continued to go to his individual sessions and work on separate things. And at that time, I really worked on who am I without being defined as Alex's husband? Who am I not being defined as my mother's son or my father's son? Who am I as not being defined by Tanya's best friend? Who am I as Peter Monn? Who am I as Peter? Who am I, this lone person that was born into this world, came to this world by myself, will leave this world by myself? Who am I by myself? And in that in-between time, like it talks about in this meditation, right? I really started doing some soul searching. I really started doing some work on myself, on who I had been, on things that I had said to people, ways that I had spoken to people that I wasn't necessarily happy about. That as much as I wanted to blame that on other people, that really started and ended with me. And I was the only one that could change that going forward. I didn't want to live out of rage and anger anymore, you know? I really had to take a look at things I had said, things that I had put out there in the world. As embarrassing and shameful as it was, I can remember my therapist and I going through each of those things and looking at them. What were you thinking at that time? Why did you think this was okay? Why did you speak to this person this way at this point in your life? I brought up stuff from when I was in high school to things that had just happened in the last year. I brought up all these things and I looked at them to see who I was, had been, who I was today, and where did I want to go? Who did I want to be? And so in between us working on this marriage, you know, I had to let that go and realize that that was either going to take care of itself and we were going to do the work on it, or it wasn't. But I was going to fix myself either way. You know, one of the things that I've shared on here is that when I started going back to meetings years ago, I went to a meeting one night because I just had a complete meltdown, you know, made a list where I was like, vacuum, fold laundry. I got done like the fourth thing, called my best friend and said, can you please take me to a meeting? That night I came home and I told my husband, I said, I'm going to go back to meetings. And he was really, really supportive. It was 4 years that I hadn't gone to 12-step meetings. And he was really supportive, you know. And I said, this is either going to save our marriage or it's going to like be the thing that splits us up, because I'm going to have to focus so much time and attention on it. But I'm going to get better. And I knew that. I knew that for our marriage to be strong, I had to be healthy. I knew for our marriage to be strong, he had to be healthy. We had to work on ourselves individually, you know? Some of the rest of it, I couldn't beg and plead for the relationship to work. Well, I really believe in retrospect that it was our individual work that we did at that point, you know? That internal anger. I had so much anger and rage at the world, you know? I spoke out and spoke to people in such nasty, angry ways. And that was because I just did not like myself inside. I was so angry and resentful at so many things in the world that had happened to me. I didn't want to be that person anymore, you know? And that was just one thing out of 50 that I had to work on, probably 100. And I started working on those things, you know? I'm still working on some of those things today with my therapist that I have today and my sponsor, you know? And Alex started working on stuff. And we started to grow and become new people. We were no longer begging each other to stay with each other. We were choosing to stay with each other because we were really enjoying the people that we were becoming. Don't ever put yourself on pause for somebody else. Because the person that you are changing and evolving and growing into, first of all, you owe it to yourself. But that person that you're waiting for, that person that you want to be with, might fall in love or more in love with that new version of yourself. Or if they don't, you might find somebody else that will fall in love with that person more than the person that you're wanting to be with. And if neither of those things happen, you're stuck with yourself. And I'd rather be stuck with myself, loving myself, appreciating myself, forgiving myself, not being full of anger and resentment and nastiness and bitterness, but full of dreams and excitement, you know, and ideas that never come to fulfillment, and coolness, and, you know, books that I want to read and movies that I want to read, and smiles and laughter and tears when appropriate, and sadness. And yes, and anger is even part of that. But today I know how to process that, you know? And that's what came out of that. Little did I know that by our marriage almost falling apart, I would find myself. Little did I know that it wouldn't just save, I say this all the time, marriage counseling saved our marriage, but it saved each of us as well. It gave me back my life. Little did I know that by having to work through our marriage, I would find myself all over again, and I did. And I'm forever grateful for it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.